Good evening. This is part two of the Holocaust genocide topic that we're discussing, and we're discussing a lot about the way that um, we are deeply, as Black Africans in North America, deeply integrated into the society. We've served in chief positions, but it doesn't mean that the Holocaust can't come, because if we look at history of the European Jews and we look at history of the children of Israel in Egypt, they were well integrated and had prominent position, and then all of a sudden the tide had turned to where the nationals became dissatisfied with our presence and the presence of the Jews, and they began to persecute them and move them out, and they're catching hell. And so, going back to the Jewish Holocaust in Europe, there were ghettos that were created by this Jewish council, by the help of this Jewish council, this Judenreich council, and this ghettoization of the masses of Jews were enabled the Germans to isolate them and be able to mistreat them, and then also be able to effectively um, oppress them. And then once they began to move out, many of them were left with no place to go, and some didn't want to go at all, and they made the ultimate plan through the Judenreich Council. That was the real time that Judenreich Council was erected, and they came out and started going against their own people. And when they eliminated them through firing squads and through mass graves and through gas chambers, they used the elite of the German society. Who's the elite? Doctors, lawyers, councilmen, governors, to carry out many of those executions. They didn't use the street thug as often. They used mainly the ones that were highly educated. They have reasons for that. The book that I'm speaking of, that I'm using, is the book called Introduction to the Holocaust by Harim Bereshith, and it's copyrighted in 2012, and it's a very good book. And I've been, in fact, I couldn't put it down once I picked it up. Lots of illustrations in it. So I have the electronic copy of it. I don't have my hard copy. I think the hard copy is much better than the electronic copy. But I still was, these are things I've read in the past, and I kind of just go over it by memory. And so I want the Black African race to be aware and be careful to not fall into the same trap and not feed into the negativity and vices that tempt us. Okay, a slight interruption there. As I said, that the book was very well written, but what I want to drive home is that there's some examples I wanted to give about indirect rule. It's really called indirect rule when the Nazis were in secret running the Jews and how to destroy their own people. And a lot of times those Jews carried it out because they were afraid, those leaders. And so we have in the United States, we have a lot of these ministers, a lot of these preachers, and you don't know who's got the calling of God. You don't know who's the puppet. Sometimes you can tell, sometimes you can't. You don't know who's a real puppet, who's a real man of God, who's a puppet. But the racist elite are intimidate you that to the point where you can only ask for so many concessions. You can only get so loud, and then the system comes after you. So you still, in reality, are not empowered as you should be, and you're not able to carry out full liberation for your people, because you have factions there that always give you so much leeway, and then they shut you down. They can shut you down so many ways besides assassinating you. They can shut you down through tying you up with litigation to exhaust all your funds, just trumped up charges. You might get many of them dismissed, but your funds are going to be depleted. They can close your radio. If you have a radio talk show, they'll close it down and replace it with some some weaker type of for a person that is a radio host. They take your show off the TV and put somebody else in your place. Okay, it's just they run it. You can only say so much. So when people talk about what are we complaining about, we're complaining about because you're tying our hands and you're tying our tongue, you're muffling us, and you're using things other than whips and chains to do it. You're censoring our books. You're censoring our speech. You're labeling us as radical. You're labeling us as militant. You label us as, what's the word, Marxist. You label us as communist. You labeling us as Antifa. You're labeling us as scum or whatever you want to call it. But why? These are attacks that come when you're really trying to get everybody up harmoniously so that we can share a common uh, dignity. But we see that that's not happening. And we know history tells us that you can go so far, and then when you're in another man's land, another man's camp, even though you think you're in the camp together, when the rubber meets the road, you find out that you're not together. You just got uniformity with no unity. That's what I call it. So the prophets of the Old Testament, I point out Daniel, who went to King Nebuchadnezzar and helped King Nebuchadnezzar with his dream. You have Joseph, who talked to Pharaoh, who had troubling dreams. God talks to these men that are outside of his belief, that he scares them on the dreams, and then the man of God comes and helps them out with it. And then always you'll hear that these kings will always call their little magicians and their astrologers and their enchanters to come. I call them court jesters, just people that speak to the ears of the leaders and what they want to hear, and try to help them because they're concerned more about like their agenda more so than they are the masses of people. Now you have few court jesters that will speak on behalf of the people, but most of them are just like puppets. I just don't see a lot in them. And it's interesting to see how in the Bible that there's always the man of God being challenged by these magicians and astrologers. That's why I'm not into that voodoo and I'm not into all of that extra stuff. I think you have one power that you have allegiance to, and whatever that power is going to either be dark or it's going to be of the light. It's going to be divine or it's going to be satanic. And so the divine, and when God tells you, he's saying, I'm coming, I say, this is what you do. If Moses casts his rod down and it turns to a serpent, and then he told Moses to do that, and then some other counterfeit comes up and throws his down and does the same thing, that is an opposing force. That is a supernaturally opposing force. So that lets you know that there's two different kinds of powers in the universe. And one represents divine, one represents wickedness. So anytime you're dealing with a system that does ugly things outside of the covenant of God, outside of the thing, you know that it's influenced by the devil, it's influenced by Satan. Okay, so these court jesters, these preachers today, and these modern day Judenreich Negroes that are running the Boys and Girls Clubs, running these different little community organizations, not teaching any of the youth anything true about their history, not allowing educators to come in and teach Afrocentric or something that empowers their self-esteem so that they can see themselves in a better light. They squash a lot of that, and they use people that look like you and me to carry those things out. And those are the ones that block you because they're looking at you as coming in like a militant. They have already demonized you, but really you're just coming in with the truth many times. And so this modern day elite group is what we need to keep our eyes on. And even in the grassroots level, we need to look at those agents there because what we need to do is turn within and begin to clean house from the family, from those members of our own household. Doesn't mean the household of the nuclear family, the household of the race, the household of the village, the household of the tribe, the household of the community. We need to deal with those enemies that be members of our own house and the ones that cause the youth to go astray, that teach them perversion, to teach them anti-Kemetism, which is just blackness, It teaches them how to be proud for who they are, and then we can become more self-reliant, independent, and sovereign. As a result, we need to unite with the greater African continent because that is really our home. We got a lot of Africans that don't feel like Africa's their home. That's a disconnect. That's because of their education. Okay? So, if the situation should turn to the worse for the ugly, turn for the worse, we still have options. We don't want to be hemmed up where we don't have any options. So, the modern day Judean rate of the black Africans, look out for them, okay? And so I'm going to look at some notes here and see. So remember, you can be well integrated in society. Doesn't mean that the Holocaust cannot come. Doesn't mean that you won't have an exodus. Now, I'm not. And one thing I want you to get very, very, very clear with me. I'm not making any references to the Trump administration with this message is not as a result of this. This message that I've been burning in me for 15 years before I knew that man existed. Okay? And the immigration situation, if you're here illegal, you're illegal. You got to deal with the consequences of that. There's no fault of anybody's administration except those who aided and abetted that. And there's no fault for anybody trying to clean that situation up. They're doing what they're supposed to be doing. Now, if you fight against that, you're wrong. You need to, no man invites you into their country for you to bite their hand when they're feeding you. He didn't invite you, and if they tell you your time is up, you have to go. It is what it is. They have that right to do that. For you to kick back and stuff, you have no right to do that. So I'm going to tell you that we're going to do it the way a man and a child of God should do it. Okay? Now, if you're in your own turf, in your own territory, and you got some grievances, you can voice those things from that turf. Then if somebody comes into your space in that situation, then you have every right to kick back, fight back, however you want to do. But when you're in somebody else's land and you're raising up flags from another country and you're being an insurrectionist, you're going to cause this situation to get locked down and make it harder for everybody. And you're going to cause this situation to be more totalitarian and more authoritarian. And that's something that we don't want. You need redress of grievances. That's a privilege in the law, and we don't want to lose that. So I'm saying these extra things that are going on, these distractions, it's only going to play right into the hands of the ensnare or what you call the hangman. Even though you think you're doing something positive by being disruptive, you play right into their hand of them locking down on you, and then all the other neighboring nations will sympathize with the lead with the people that are enforcing. What you want to do is keep uh, them sympathetic to your cry, and don't let the tables turn against you. So this is the end of part 2, and I will pick up a part 3, and we'll kind of recap and see if there's some things that are missed, and we'll cover those. God bless you. Until then, Hotep.